One of my most pleasant surprises late last year was Once Human, and the discovery that the game is actually shaping up to be interesting, content-rich, and decently fun, and I wasn't really expecting that when I first learned about it, because those early Once Human trailers really left much to be desired, and frankly did a pretty poor job of painting an accurate picture of what sort of a game it is. But after spending a ton of time with the December beta test, I came away fairly impressed. There's still some questions surrounding parts of its monetization, and I'm left with the same sort of uncertainty that I have with many free-to-play games, which won't be fully realized and sorted out until it officially launches. But as for the game itself, like playing Once Human, yeah, I really enjoyed it. At its core, it's an open-world MMO looter shooter that to me felt like a combination of games like The Division, Defiance, and Secret World with its sort of otherworldly elements, and with a little bit of survival and base building put on top of the whole thing. So on one hand, it's a full-on open-world looter shooter, like I said, and that has everything you expect. You'll go around doing PvE stuff of fighting enemies and bosses, collecting materials and loot as you gear and power yourself up. As you go around exploring, you'll move through this open world and stumble across all sorts of different points of interest and types of content. There are strongholds, which are like the primary form of PvE activity while you're leveling. These are various named locations all around the map, full of enemies to clear and objectives to complete. Some of them even have various puzzles and riddles to solve. There are world events like bosses that roam around, such as the spider bus. There's this King of the Hill style horde mode, even these fog events where fog suddenly rolls in and you're given a timer and some objective, normally kill some enemies. There are dungeons called silos. You'll move through these, clearing rooms of enemies and fighting a boss at the end. And then monoliths, which are large instanced boss encounters separate from the dungeon bosses. These fights tend to have several phases and can be quite the challenge, especially being a gear check of sorts. And then all around the place, you'll see small camps of enemies. You'll find NPC towns filled with vendors. There are fast travel locations. There's also a bunch of different PvP activities in the game if you enjoy that, from points of interest that turn contested, letting you fight other players for rewards, to entire servers that you can choose to play on where full PvP is enabled all of the time, and it's even got this base attack and defense mechanics. In addition to all of the other MMO and looter shooter stuff that we mentioned, the game has survival crafting as well. You'll go around scavenging for resources. You got a stamina, sanity, hydration, and hunger meters. There's base building, which has all the variety you expect, and those bases can be built pretty much anywhere in the game with the exception of roads, and right next to points of interest, you're going to see player bases all over the place as you play. Lots of progression available as well. Besides leveling up, you've got the crafting of gear and mods, along with this blueprint system, your cradle and deviations, all of which provide additional perks and special powers. And that is just like the Cliff Notes version of what is in Once Human. There's a lot to this game, and as I said earlier, it far exceeded my expectations when I checked out the playtest in December that went into January, especially in terms of like the amount of variety of content. I literally wasn't expecting it. Honestly, this is one of the games I'm most looking forward to releasing in 2024. Now, since the last playtest, there have been quite a few updates and announcements, so let's catch up to speed, see what's new, what's changing, and when you can play the game again, which, as it turns out, is going to be pretty soon. In late February, they revealed plans to host another public beta test. During this announcement, they intended for it to start in late March, but then just a few days ago, this actually got pushed back, and it will now begin on April the 3rd. So if you missed checking out the game the first time around, you're going to have another shot here, and you're going to have quite a long time to do so as well, as the April beta is planned to run for a full 42 days, ending in the middle of May. This test will include all of the same content, features, and areas from the previous one, along with a few new additions. The first of these details were revealed the week after. On February 27th, along with releasing a new gameplay video, they published a blog post teasing some of this new content. So these include some new monsters, some of which were showcased in the trailer, along with new boss encounters like this massive unit with a drill bit for a head, and replacing the heads of creatures with various inanimate objects is kind of a running theme in this game. You'll see creatures with televisions and lamps on their heads, even ones with radio towers on their heads. They also revealed this beta will include a new explorable area called the Eternal Land. They were pretty vague on details here, but they said it was like an instance zone that gives players the freedom to construct diverse buildings, territories, and puzzle solving. Initially, this sort of sounded to me like a creative mode where maybe base building wasn't restricted by resources or something, but at the time wasn't entirely sure. As I said, they were pretty vague on details. We did learn more later on though. Also, they said that this test is going to include, as per feedback from the last beta, they will be be having a brand new PvP season, and they're introducing new deviants. So these are the pets or companions in the game. They grant you additional perks and abilities. It's got this Tamagotchi mechanic as well, where you store them in a case and you have to do things to keep them happy, like maintaining a certain temperature range, playing certain types of music, or having specific lighting and decor in the nearby vicinity. Keeping them happy then generates points, which you can spend to get certain rewards and unlocks, including the resource to make these special limited power potions. Like there's the wings potion that lets you glide around the map. There's spring legs that let you jump higher. High voltage has you dealing electric damage with melee attacks whenever it's storming. And then there's the chrysalis elixir, which grants a shield whenever you're critically injured, and much, much more. Pretty cool system here. This whole deviant thing and the Tamagotchi keeping it happy, and then all the extra stuff that you get from your deviants. Also in this update, they did mention that after garnering a lot of attention from the last beta, the game climbed its way all the way to the #2 most wish-listed spot on Steam. Although I did just check and it's dropped down quite a few positions. It's still pretty high up, all things considered. So after this, we got some more detailed plans for their next season. On March the 5th, they released an update giving us an in-depth look at their plans for how seasons are going to work, what they are like, as well as some information about this new zone, Eternal Land. So for the seasonal stuff, it sort of functions like you expect. It's going to be regular resets of content where you start fresh, making a new character, and checking out the new stuff that is in a particular season with various seasonal goals to chase after. So here's what they specifically said. In Once Human, every season introduces a fresh journey where you start anew and experience exclusive seasonal content within a fixed time frame. The content will vary from season to season, presenting new stories, events, and mechanics. Each season brings forth a unique set of objectives, whether it involves resisting the invasion of an otherworldly entities or seizing control of the core region. In the pursuit of these goals, you will explore different maps, experiment with various gear and character builds, and encounter new enemies. They then state that you're going to have the freedom to pick from a variety of season scenarios and decide how you want to progress through them. Sort of like what we see in most ARPGs that launch nowadays, it appears like Once Human will be releasing with seasonal content at the forefront. This is a seasonal based game where you are constantly starting things over. Sort of. There will be a non-seasonal section of the game. Turns out that's actually what Eternal Land is. But of course, what's interesting and of note here is that this isn't a hack and slash ARPG. It's an open world MMO looter shooter, and those don't normally have a seasonal focus, at least not to this extent. So they went on to explain their goal and exactly how this whole thing's gonna function. They said, Once Human strives to bring you a fair, balanced, and stress-free gaming experience. That is why seasons are introduced. With seasons, you have the freedom to enjoy the content of your choice and dive into the game at your own pace. So at first I was confused here. I don't know what this has to do with seasons in particular, as you can have a fair and balanced and stress-free gaming experience in a non-seasonal MMO. Unless, of course, what they're talking about, and this is what I presume, they're probably talking about player power getting out of control eventually on the Eternal version of the game, whether that relates to how that might pertain to the cash shop, or even just people playing the game and grinding like crazy until they get to super high power levels, in which case, yes, seasons let them reset that power and put everyone back on an even footing. Kind of part of the whole point, besides like regularly introducing new content, having a fresh restart for everybody is kind of part of the whole appeal to seasonal structure. They then go on to say that the seasonal possessions and achievements will carry over, things like weapon blueprints, the bases you build, and the materials you farm. So they say at the end of each season, your character and their progress will be transferred to the Eternal Land, which is currently under development, and from there you have the freedom to choose what you want to bring with you when you begin the next season in accordance with the rules for that particular season. And that actually sounds pretty darn neat. With each season comes different rule sets for what you can start with. So just spitballing some ideas here, maybe they have a season where you can bring anything that you can fit in your character inventory with you, and then you start with that. Or maybe in another season, you can only bring the gear that you're wearing on your character. Or maybe there's a season where your base carries over and you can place it down in the world, but none of your material storage comes. There's a lot of potential with things that they could do here based on the rule sets that they put in place for each of these seasons and what they let people bring over from the Eternal Realm. And yeah, this could be pretty neat, although I do have to point out it kind of goes against the aforementioned fresh and fair restarts if they're letting people carry any significant portion of their Eternal stuff with them into the new seasons. But that said, I don't know, this is an interesting take on seasons. I like trying new things, and this sounds like I haven't played a seasonal game that has this sort of structure to it. So they then state as well that when the season ends, you are given a choice, and that choice is to either replay the same season you just did with its particular rule sets and theme and content, or to sign up for a different season. So it appears maybe it's not going to actually be quarterly, but much more consistent and ongoing, repeating constantly with new servers being spun up. You finish the season and you can go straight into another one, or you can repeat the season that you just did. They then reiterate that in every season, everyone starts on an equal footing, which isn't, I guess, really true if you're letting you carry things over, but whatever, which gives new players a chance to catch up while offering veterans a fresh challenge. This means the game will be more inclusive, enabling friends to play together even if they join the game at different times. They then go into more details about some of the specific seasonal mechanics and the different aspects to a season. So first, there are what are called season stages. They say in Once Human, a season is subdivided into different stages, each offering unique gameplay features and challenges. By completing stage tasks together, players can earn generous rewards. As the season progresses, more regions and gameplay content will be unlocked, allowing players to access to the full storyline and culminating in a final battle that will envelop the entire game world. Players emerging from that fray will then enter the season's settlement phase. During the settlement phase, players are free to continue exploring the open world, completing any remaining season challenges, exploring strongholds, hunting for riddle spots across the map, or simply sitting back and relaxing with their friends. Then, when they are ready, players can choose to sign up for a new season and embark upon their next journey. So this is really interesting. They're dividing the season into these sections, and it's like a progression, right? You begin at the start of the season, it'll have its theme, it'll have whatever unique content, story stuff, areas, whatever, its goals, and then as people on that seasonal server play, they will complete those goals, unlocking new areas, new content, new things to do, new boss fights. This then continues, culminating in some sort of big final battle, whether it's a boss battle or some sort of horde mode event or whatever it is. And then after that battle, the season goes into that chill mode that they call settlement phase, letting you do what you want. If you want to wrap up some season goals or whatever, complete some things that you didn't get around to before the end of the season. And then I guess once a season is in settlement phase, it's your choice to restart that season on another version of that seasonal server, or to move on to another brand new season. Now, there may very well be other games that have structured seasonal content like this, but this is the first time I've ever experienced something like this. This all sounds pretty neat to me. Now, next they talk about content inheritance, and this is basically the stuff that carries over from one season to the Eternal Realm into the other season. So here they say, after completing a season, you can bring the resources and blueprints you accumulated with you when you sign up to a new season. In-game tokens, weapons and gear blueprints, mods, skins, building blueprints, titles, in-game friends, etc. Those will all be inherited directly. Other more basic inventory resources, such as materials, components, medicines, ammo, and gear, will be transferred to the Eternal Land Depot. Before the next season begins, players can decide which resources they want to bring with them as they embark upon their next new journey. So how I am reading this section, it seems to me like you will be starting a season with all of your blueprint stuff, like all of the things that you have researched, the weapon and gear blueprints, the mods, the skins, the building blueprints, the titles, your friends, all of that. It sounds like all of that stuff carries with you into the seasons, but then the specific materials used for the crafting, the various components for things, the medicines, the ammo, and the actual gear, you keep your blueprints, but the gear itself that has to be crafted, that doesn't carry over, that stays in the Eternal Land, and then you have to decide what you take with you into the next season. So presumably it's basically whatever you can fit on your character with your basic inventory, not the storage space, whatever, but the actual character inventory, the stuff that fits in your backpack more or less, which is gated by things like a weight limit and capacity and all that. Again, this is a little conflicting with what was mentioned earlier, but it sounds like there might be some variations where certain seasons don't let you take the materials and components and medicines, but only ammo and gear that you can wear or whatever. Interested to see how they actually structure this. They provide a little more detail about the specifics of Eternal Land as well. They say, Eternal Land is a player's permanent personal mini world and serves as a stopover for players transferring to a new season. So this isn't an Eternal Realm as much as it is a player eternal location. There isn't one realm where everyone's eternal with all their characters, but every player has their own eternal land. This is a place where items can be permanently stored, resources accumulated when playing through the storyline, rare collectibles gathered in different worlds, or unique building structures, all can be stored safely. In Eternal Land, buildings no longer have any upper limits or range restrictions. Players are free to let their imaginations run wild and create dazzling building structures unfettered by the normal gameplay restrictions. Players can also customize the gameplay rules and invite their friends to step into their Eternal Land and experience their creations firsthand. So yeah, it almost kind of sounds like instance player housing, but a little more fleshed out, as there's going to be some land aspect to it and not just your personal home, which was kind of what I initially guessed when I heard Eternal Land, that it was some sort of creative mode. It's kind of like that, but it's also a home base and a storage place for your stuff that you will ferry with you in between the different seasons. In terms of the seasonal themes, they haven't revealed a lot, but they did say that the only scenario players have been able to experience so far for seasons was the Prime War, and that was the one that was running during the last beta test. And the development team has been working hard on a range of new season scenarios. They then gave some examples. Currently in development include the Silver Gate season, a PvP scenario accessed by Stronghold Conquest, and also a faction confrontation scenario where players can choose an NPC faction and step into the snowy and volcanic areas to the north. So we're going to be getting new content areas. We're going to be getting new types of features where we're choosing a faction to fight for, probably a reputation system with that, new boss fights and stuff like that, I presume, new quests, new areas. Obviously, we already said that. PvP focused scenarios or seasons that you can choose if you want to be a PvP player. Yeah, I mean, this sounds pretty cool. Like I said earlier, I've played many games that have a seasonal structure. Not used to it in an MMO open world looter shooter, and also not used to how they are structuring this here. And on top of everything else that I've enjoyed about the game in terms of it, just the depth of content, the amount of stuff there was to do and see, it just felt really fleshed out for a game that's still in testing for an MMO looter shooter that I had very little expectations of when I first saw and learned about it. Like I said earlier, it took me by, it was a very, very pleasant surprise. Really enjoyed my time, and all of this stuff really just adds to my interest and excitement for the game going forward, because this seasonal content actually sounds pretty darn interesting to me. So as I mentioned, there is beta testing that's going to be taking place and starting on April the 3rd. They have stated that players from the previous betas are going to automatically have access just by using your existing login information. And if you're a new player who didn't play the last test, they say to stay tuned for their Discord for the announcement of the launcher pre-download dates. And here's why: it is limited. So pre-downloading the launcher is all it takes to ensure beta access. Once it opens up, which they're going to announce in the future, again, they say stay tuned to their Discord. Once that opens up, if you download the launcher and you create an account, you will have beta access. However, it is limited to the first 150,000 downloads. So they're going to cap this here. They were starting to run into, as they opened up access for the last beta, the game ended up being way more popular than they anticipated, and they ran into some server issues. Then they ended up closing things down and then slowly opening it up over time. So it seems like, at least for the start of this beta, they are limiting it to 150,000 new participants. And then I assume as people leave and as the servers stabilize, they will slowly introduce the ability for more people to join. Almost certainly that is exactly what's going to be happening. And as of now, the game is set to release in Q3 2024. I'm a little bit torn because I do absolutely want to jump in and play this some more, but I also want to be careful not to burn myself out. I already spent I don't know what it ended up being, like 60 or 70 hours or something. I played the last beta for a long time, but I really liked it. And yeah, it's one of the games I am most anticipating for this year, especially for MMOs, because there's really not a lot, right? It's pretty much just like once human and then thrown in Liberty, which I'm feeling a little iffy about. Still excited to try, but not really certain. And then I guess Core Punk might be coming out, but yeah, this is a cool looking game. I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, there you go. That's it for the most recent updates. Thanks as always for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy.